Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, August 11th, 2020, and today is VP Decision Day, or it'll be tomorrow or the day after. But pretty much 5 days before the convention, the Democratic or Republican nominee announces their pick for vice president, and it looks like Joe Biden might be announcing today or tomorrow. Taking a look at the media setup in Delaware. Let's go ahead and take a look at the picture here. Obviously, there's nothing revealed, but if we're looking here, this is where Joe Biden announced his first Senate bid in 1972. So this is a pretty significant place for Vice President Biden. Looking at the area that we're expecting a pretty big media setup. As you can see, there's no logos anywhere, so looks like they might be replacing it with Biden, whoever's last name that he's picking. But it looks like the media is ready for a very big event to be announced sometime soon. So as we look here, I think this is a very ominous look for a lot of Democrats across this country. There's so many people expecting certain picks, and I think that a number of people will be let down, and a number of people will be very happy. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about who I think will be Joe Biden's VP choice, and whether or not, looking at some of these candidates, what I think about them in terms of their addition to the Biden campaign. Moving past what I'm just about to talk to, let's look at the predicted map. So Joe Biden has a pretty significant lead over Donald Trump in terms of where people think he will do better in terms of the states that he thinks he can win. Biden thinks people that are not necessarily supporting Biden, but putting their money where they expect the election to go, are expecting Biden to carry Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida, North Carolina, and Arizona. These are all states that went to Donald Trump in 2016. And the reason why that's so significant is because these states should be leading for President Trump. He had a pretty significant lead in both North Carolina and Arizona. In fact, North Carolina voted to the right of Arizona in 2016, but looking at all those states, Trump should be at least in a competitive race, and he isn't so much in the Rust Belt. Now, when Biden announces his VP today, you can almost guarantee a lot of these chances are going to jump up dramatically. He's more than likely choosing a woman of color, which means that these areas where we see increased African-American turnout in primaries, and then what is expected to be increased African-American turnout in the general election, states such as Georgia and North Carolina, with a very large percent black population, we could likely see Biden's numbers skyrocket, especially in the Rust Belt as well. Even though there isn't exactly too large of a black demographic in these states, they have led Democrats to victory in the past, on top of those white voters that are moving over into the Biden column. So I could expect Biden's numbers to rise regardless of who the VP choice is, but let's talk about who the predicted market thinks the VP choice is going to be. So throughout the entire campaign season, pretty much Kamala Harris has always been the lead for who people believe will be the pick. Susan Rice was actually right under Val Demings for almost all of May, and then moving on to June and July, Susan Rice started to take over to a point where it was between Susan Rice and Kamala Harris as the top two. Now, Susan Rice is leading Kamala Harris in terms of who people think the vice presidential nominee is going to be. This largely has to do with the fact that there's a number of leaks within the Biden campaign talking about Susan Rice or Kamala Harris. Those are the only two options, and then talking about how it obviously isn't their only two options. People are just saying that because they're trying to either close up the markets or drive a lot of attention towards the race itself for vice president. On top of that, looking at what the Biden operatives have been releasing to the press, talking about how the VP pick is not who you expect it to be. I think a lot of people are expecting it to be Kamala Harris or Susan Rice, so it could literally go either way. And if we're talking about flight logs, Gretchen Whitmer flew to Delaware, and then there's a plane from South Bend, Indiana, but it isn't Pete Buttigieg's, and it's going to Delaware. All of that really probably isn't the best indicator. I think both Susan Rice and Kamala Harris should be in Delaware at this point. Doesn't matter if you could track their flight log or not, but looking at where people are looking for small hints, talking about the DNC rough draft for the speaking list, that really doesn't matter. I mean, yes, some notable names are off it, including Val Demings, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be chosen. Obviously, if Kamala Harris and Susan Rice are both on the speaking, or Kamala Harris and Gretchen Whitmer, you could fill them in with the VP choice. That likely could just be there as a placeholder. So don't take the DNC rough draft to heart. I mean, looking at the flight logs and who unfollowed who on Twitter really doesn't matter. Also, Kamala Harris never followed Joe Biden on Twitter, so all of those things about she unfollowed him right after he decided to choose his VP choice. No, that wasn't true. She never followed him to begin with, but she still follows him on her campaign account. So obviously she wasn't going to follow the campaign on her Senate account. But moving past that, let's take a look at who the New York Times thinks are the front runners. So number one, of course, they have Senator Kamala Harris. She seems to be a very good pick for Vice President Biden. Of course, I have my own personal bias, thinking that Kamala Harris should be the pick, just because 3 years ago I said that she would be the vice presidential pick. So, of course, I want to be right, but also a lot of people seem to think that she's the front runner in this race as well. So she's served in the California Senate. She also served as Attorney General. So some people do have some inclination to think that she could possibly be Attorney General if she's not chosen as Vice President. Then also some people think Doug Jones should be Attorney General. Really all depends, but Kamala Harris, if she isn't Vice President, probably will serve as Attorney General in the Biden administration if he is to win. I meant to say. So looking at the pros and cons, the way that she attacked Vice President Biden really shouldn't have put her in contention in the first place. For a pretty significant portion of the campaign, it seemed that, at least last year, that Kamala Harris was in firm opposition to Joe Biden, that this wouldn't even be considered later on in the election. So when we look at her attacks against Vice President Biden, those very well could be used against her. But then again, the Trump administration doesn't stand necessarily for anything different than what they would attack Joe Biden for. So looking at Kamala Harris's comments, they could be used by a PAC that may be in opposition to Joe Biden, but not so much pro-Donald Trump. But really, I don't think that's going to happen, to be completely honest. It could just be thrown off as, this is a primary. Obviously, we're going to attack one another. And then she's pretty well known. I mean, she's the most popular choice for VP out of all of these women. So I would say, yes, she has a shaky history. She attacked Joe Biden, but also she brings a lot to the campaign and is a very, very good fundraiser. Susan Rice. Susan Rice doesn't offer anything electorally, and neither does Kamala Harris, other than Kamala Harris's ability to appeal to black voters. Susan Rice could do the same thing. So Susan Rice, I think she would be a good pick if she wasn't so closely tied to the Obama administration. The reason why she's so far up here is because she has worked with Vice President Biden for years. I mean, she worked with him in the Obama White House, and they were able to do things together. And also, people would bring up the fact that Susan Rice would be close with Hillary Clinton, talking about Benghazi. That's one of the downsides to her being chosen. I mean, that would be brought back up. We would be talking about Hillary Clinton scandals in the 2020 election, despite her not running. So with a lot of, hatred in the country towards Hillary Clinton, I think it's very difficult for me to see how Susan Rice could be a very, very good pick. I honestly think Kamala Harris would be a better pick than Susan Rice, just because bringing up the same scandals from 4 years ago may seem like it won't work. Definitely could work. I mean, the American electorate loves to be swayed by things that are completely irrelevant to an election. So looking at where Susan Rice, she has a pretty good relationship with Vice President Biden. She could very well work with him for the next 4 years eloquently. But the baggage that she brings to the campaign could also bring them down as well. Not to say Harris won't bring any baggage to the campaign. These all will. All of these candidates definitely will in one way or another. But I think Rice, well, yes, is the favorite based off the predicted markets. I don't necessarily think that she should be the VP choice. And I'm not just saying that because of the fact that I think it should be Kamala Harris. I think that Susan Rice, I don't necessarily think that the Biden campaign should be doing anything that could even consider the scandals from the Obama administration. They're already working with the vice president under Obama, and people are already using things such as Obamagate and falsified claims against Obama against Vice President Biden. And now Susan Rice could add on the Hillary Clinton side that we saw 4 years ago that actually worked pretty well. Now, Elizabeth Warren, I think that in a time where we're calling for a woman of color as VP, Elizabeth Warren has been moved out of the running. Now, she would have been a very good candidate if there wasn't a major push for Joe Biden to choose the woman of color. But Elizabeth Warren, she'd be a very strong VP choice as well. She's a very strong debater. She has a number of policies that could appease the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. But then again, like I said, optics is everything. The way that we see this election, seeing a woman of color at the VP choice versus a white woman, doesn't matter what they fundamentally stand for. A lot of people are going to be inspired by the fact that there could be a woman of color in the White House compared to, a white woman. And obviously, people say, you should choose the VP choice based off their qualifications, not their skin color. A lot of these women of color are as qualified and sometimes more qualified than Elizabeth Warren to be VP. So Warren, I think she would be a good choice in any other year but this one. And I don't think that Vice President Biden is going to choose her. I don't think he'll choose Gretchen Whitmer either, despite her having a plane ride over to Delaware. I think this would actually be a bad choice for the Biden campaign. I think he'd win with almost all of these candidates, but Gretchen Whitmer, I think, would be not necessarily, obviously she's a great governor. I mean, she's approved of by her constituents. She's handling the COVID-19 response very well. But I don't necessarily think that this will be enough to move over a lot of those undecided Republican voters, those moderate voters. I think she would probably be, with the firm opposition from President Trump, I think she would be immediately hated by America. Not only by the right, but also by some people on the left who may not necessarily agree with Gretchen Whitmer. I mean, she came from a pretty contested Democratic primary in 2018. She also doesn't offer the experience that some of these other candidates do. If, in the case where Joe Biden was to resign or, something happened to him in the White House, people wouldn't necessarily be confident that Gretchen Whitmer, someone who served only a half term as a governor could take over. And I understand governing is very similar to holding executive power, but she's only been in there for 2 years. And I think that's something that's really going to be targeted. Experience was everything in 2016. It was almost everything in 2020. Biden was chosen as the experienced candidate, someone who could beat Donald Trump. And if they throw someone on who, if the health issues about Biden come back up, they may attack Gretchen Whitmer for saying that she doesn't have enough experience to take that position. 2008 was a perfect example. People didn't trust Sarah Palin to take over for John McCain in the event that John McCain could no longer serve as president. So Gretchen Whitmer, again, probably a good pick in any other year, but this one, once she gets a little bit more experience. Karen Bass, there's a number of things that come out against her. She's a progressive, so she would help the progressive wing of the Democratic Party move over to the Biden column. A lot of them are a little bit iffy about voting for him or whether or not they're voting third party or voting at all. I think Karen Bass would appease a lot of those voters, but a lot of the comments that she has been making and has made in the past really are working against her. And then Val Demings, of course, offers an electoral advantage in Florida. Honestly, I don't necessarily think that she would be the best pick either. Run one ad of her in a police chief uniform could turn off a whole wave of black voters across this country. I understand the idea of joining the police force for reform, but then again, it's just going to be jumbled up with this entire Black Lives Matter movement that's going to be dominating the headlines for the next couple of months, even past the presidential election. And I think that the Biden campaign is going to embrace them, but they can't do so if they choose someone who served as a police chief. It's already shaky to choose Kamala Harris, who has a pretty shaky record as a prosecutor, but I think that would actually be a bad blow to the Biden campaign. And then Tammy Duckworth, she would be another woman of color, but also I think she has a lot less baggage than the rest of these candidates. But then again, I wouldn't necessarily think that Biden would choose her, especially with the possibility of losing an Illinois Senate race. It is possible that they do lose the Senate race. Massachusetts was lost for the Democrats during the Obama administration. A number of races went to the Republicans in 2014 in the governor election. So some of these Democratic states could very well go to the Republican Party. If there's a special election, there's a huge referendum against an incumbent president, which could happen with Joe Biden. So Tammy Duckworth, I think she would be a good choice. I also think that he should choose a black woman. Keisha Lance Bottoms, and again, a lot of these rest of these candidates, they probably aren't being considered as much as people would like them to be considered. A lot of these are just senators or governors. Amy Klobuchar even said that she does not want to even be considered for VP. So looking at a lot of these candidates, we're probably going to see the final pick come down to these top three candidates. And then on top of that, I think that at the end of the day, Joe Biden will choose between Susan Rice and Kamala Harris. So I'm not so sure as to whether or not I think it'll be Harris or Rice, just because of the fact that we're seeing a lot of media indication that, number one, it has to be one of these two. And on top of that, the Biden campaign works very well with both Harris and Rice. I think Harris outweighs Rice in terms of fundraising, but Rice in terms of ties with Biden and being able to work with him for the next 4 years. I think it'll be very close. I think that we may be surprised and we may not be. But I'm going to say my final prediction is that Kamala Harris will be the vice presidential nominee, just because that's been a long time coming. And also because I do want to be right in that sense, but also Susan Rice absolutely is in contention for the vice presidential spot. So I would say it's Harris. If not Harris, then Rice. But if I'm wrong with both of those, well, then I guess I just completely misread the vice presidential nomination race. But then again, we misread things all the time. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's a Discord link for you to go ahead and join, and then a video that you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2020 election predictions. You can go ahead and check those out as well. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.